Director of Programs here at the Truman Library. And thank you so much for coming tonight. And I know we had a couple of events going on, so thank you so much for coming. And so this is Deion, and Kurt is a public historian and author, a guest speaker, and a presidential expert for RoadshowAmerica.com. He holds a master's degree in history. At age 14, he launched KurtHistoricSites.com as a means to both document his travels and to encourage others to visit grave sites and engage in hands-on history. His website and his cemetery pilgrimages, just said that very sorry, were the subject of a 2015 interview on the C-SPAN show. A native Rhode Islander, he currently works as an education specialist at Historic Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. And since 2023, he has been a White House Historical Association Next Gen leader. So with that, we welcome Kurt.
Thank you. Thank you, Azalea, very much. And start this off with, I have a book trailer for my book. So, like a movie trailer, but for a book.
What got our attention was the fact that you have been to every presidential gravesite and
Yes.
every vice president's gravesite.
Yes.
Thank you.
Story about the Congressional Medal of Honor, why it took 10 years for him to get that, 100 years for him to get that. Go ahead, you can photograph each other.
Presidential grave
Those cute
hunting.
ones.
One kid's quest to visit the tombs of every president and vice president by Kurt Deion. Tag along for a most unusual ride as the author recounts his life-affirming journey to these tombs and from elementary school neophyte to college history major.
So these are the sarcophagi, or basically coffin containers. Each sarcophagus holds a president and first lady.
With his zany, boundary-pushing father at the wheel, his journey was unorthodox.
Gravy hunter here at the original grave site of Colonel Sanders. We couldn't find the extra crispy one.
Hot dog.
The straight-laced youngster found himself sneaking a camera past Secret Service agents.
But you gotta tell the story about how you, between you and your father, on the camera, how you got that in there.
We weren't allowed to take pictures, and he was probably lucky he wasn't tasered or anything by the Secret Service.
Purposely locked in a cemetery enclosed with barbed wire.
Sometimes you're gonna get locked in cemeteries, and you have to call security, or you have to climb over the barbed wire.
Handcuffed to the former Dallas homicide detective who was tethered to alleged JFK assassin Lee Harvey Oswald when he was shot by Jack Ruby.
And a Mr. Lavelle here was handcuffed to Lee Harvey Oswald, and Oswald was then shot during the transfer by a local nightclub owner named Jack Ruby, and the instance was captured in a famous Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph.
And most daringly, he reluctantly gained entry to a vice president's private family burial ground.
As you know, the one gravesite that everybody has trouble getting to that wants to do this is the Rockefeller gravesite.
Yes, Nelson Rockefeller, vice president for Ford.
How did you do it?
Well, as my father likes to describe it, it's an act of God. So,
An act of God.
Are there others in your family?
yes, my mother, Lynn, and my sister, Olivia, who is 3 years younger than I am.
What does she think of all this?
What do you think of James Buchanan, Olivia?
I don't like presidents.
Fantastic. I think she said she loves presidents.
I've
Enough?
done it!
In this history-driven memoir, Deion reconstructs his decade-long cross-country quest and analyzes the evolution of his perspective on the commanders-in-chief and what it means to visit a cemetery.
If you're going to the gravesite of President Marvin Van Buren in Kinderhook, New York, you could probably dig up his grave and nobody would find out a few days. So, do you never
truly know exactly what you're going to
Buck
find
stops here, sign
at a
up
place
top
more
left.
cool.
Well, hello again, everybody. So that was the book trailer. So I bet you maybe haven't seen a book trailer before. That's the intro to my presentation. I'm just wild about cemeteries. So I like to give it a little bit of a twist depending on which site I'm presenting at. So going off of Harry Truman here a little bit, here at the Truman Presidential Library in Independence, Missouri. My personal favorite presidential library. So this means a lot to me to be able to come back here 15 years after my initial visit and present here, just a few yards away from the Truman gravesite. So I started out with the presidents and the first ladies and the vice presidents, but I really went overboard, and these are my totals as of this afternoon are 2,434 historical and pop culture grave sites that are listed as famous on the database findagrave.com. So findagrave.com has over 238 million burial records. It's great for looking up ancestry, different genealogical stuff, just who's this random person that I stumbled across in my local graveyard, but then also tells you where different historical figures or celebrities are buried. They designate those with a star saying they're famous, which can be subjective. But of those on the website, yeah, I've been to 2,400. So I've had a normal life, as you can see, by 29 years. Now, by the numbers, there are 39 deceased presidents. Again, Harry Truman just out there a few yards from us. And I have been to all 39. There are also 43 deceased vice presidents. I've been to 42 out of the 43. What threw me is a few years ago, Jimmy Carter's vice president, Walter Mondale, passed away. And as of yet, his cremated ashes are still in a vase and urn made by Mrs. Mondale in possession of the Mondale family. They have said publicly that they intend to bury Vice President Mondale's remains at Lakewood Cemetery in Minneapolis at some point in the future. I've been in contact with the reporter who wrote that article, interviewing them, and she at first said she was going to get back in touch with the Mondales and shake some answers out of them for me. But then I haven't heard anything from her the last few times I've reached out, so I still can't get Walter Mondale. But if anybody has the Mondale's phone number, please just see me afterward, and you know, I can go visit their mantle or something. I would appreciate that. I've also seen 22 out of the 49 deceased speakers of the House, and getting 2 this morning, including one in Kansas and one in Kansas City at Forest Hill Cemetery. I'm up to 70 Supreme Court justices out of the 104 deceased. Other numbers, presidents pro tem. So who's in charge of the Senate when the vice president isn't there? President pro tem, I've been to 37 out of the 89 deceased. 41 out of the 56 Declaration of Independence signers. I just got 2 more Baseball Hall of Famers today, so I'm up to 106 out of 270 dead. And I really jumped the shark a few years ago when I decided, oh, I'm going to go after cabinet members. So now I'm up to 212 cabinet members. I've also been to the graves of 6 out of the 3 Stooges. So math is not my specialty, history is. So yes, Curly, Moe, Larry, Joe, Shemp, and Curly Joe, all there. Now, who would visit a grave? A president's grave even? Well, a president would, because that's Theodore Roosevelt visiting Andrew Jackson's grave. And there I am, roughly the same spot, at 11 years old, visiting Andrew and Rachel Jackson's graves. So I'm in good company, I guess, and I'm sure that you've been to the Truman gravesite outside, especially those of you who work here. So now I'm here presenting a little bit about my book, Presidential Grave Hunter. So for many years, people told me, you have had an interesting kind of wacky, off-kilter childhood growing up. You should write a book about it. So I wrote a book about it. It came out last year. It's in paperback form. It's available here at the Truman Library gift store. And it's also available online, and there's an ebook version too, if that's more your style, but I recommend spending your money at the Truman Library. It has 15 chapters, and it's got pretty good ratings. It's 4.67 star average out of 5 on Goodreads, and a 4.95 average rating on Amazon. So other people recommend it. I certainly recommend it. So now, a lot of people, they'll come up to me and they'll say, aren't all the presidents and the first ladies and the vice presidents, aren't they all just buried in Arlington National Cemetery in one spot? No, they're buried all across the country. So all the states that are in red here, you can see, so that's 23 states and the District of Columbia. The presidents themselves are in 18 states in DC. You throw in a few more states when you lump in the vice presidents, such as South Carolina, where John C. Calhoun is, or Minnesota, where Hubert Humphrey is, and Walter Mondale, eventually on a mantle right now, I guess. So they're spread out, and this quest took me about 10 years to do. The first presidential, vice presidential, first lady graves I went to were John Abigail, John Quincy, and Louisa Catherine Adams. They are interred in the Church of the Presidents in Quincy, Massachusetts, which, by the way, is pronounced like a Z sound, a zoo or a zipper, not Quincy. I got told that very emphatically when I was an intern here later. But I really loved it. I was 8 years old when I first went there. My uncle took me to the Adams houses, part of the Adams National Historical Park. And it was great to be able to go into the homes, the birthplaces. This is where John Adams lived when he was 8 years old, and now here I am at 8 years old and going through. This is where Abigail Adams wrote those letters to John when he was away in Europe and Philadelphia, the Continental Congress. And then I was able to go into the church nearby where their bodies are laid to rest in the crypt. And that's where their story ended in the physical sense, and where they ended up, these relics. And to be able to go into the crypt, and I remember running my fingers across the inscriptions on top of the Quincy granite sarcophagi and just be really mesmerized. And it was great. Unfortunately, we didn't have a camera that day, so I had to go back about 10 months later and get this photo. And I'm holding one of those miniature Marx Company figurines from the 1950s of John Quincy Adams there. But that just really hit it home for me. Wow, I was reading about him in these books, and then there he is, and there's Abigail, Louisa. It was great. Another big grave for me was, of course, George and Martha Washington's grave, their tomb at their slave plantation at Mount Vernon in Virginia along the Potomac River. There's so much that I could get into about the history of the tomb. It's really fascinating. In fact, there's a whole book about it that a fellow historian of mine wrote, Matthew R. Costello. He's at the White House Historical Association, and I recommend his book, The Property of the Nation. But this was just a really moving moment to be able to go and say, I am just a few feet away from the sarcophagus of George Washington. Now, I'm actually excited there. I don't look it. It was just really hot and humid that day. It was DC area in late July 2003. I was 8 years old. It was a bit to get through, but I was thrilled. And then eventually started going to all the president graves. And what is my favorite grave? This is actually my favorite across the board. I told you that I've been to over 2,400 different historical and pop culture figure graves. This is number one for me, the James A. Garfield tomb in Cleveland, Ohio, Lakeview Cemetery. President Garfield and Mrs. Garfield, Lucretia, are laid to rest in the crypt in the basement. Now, outside of the crypt, you have this 180-foot tall monument. This is the tallest of any presidential gravesite. You have bas-reliefs, you have terracotta sculptures, you have gargoyles, you see them coming off the end there a little bit. Oh. And they have stained glass windows inside, an Italian marble statue, mosaics, murals. You go down into the basement, and top left there, their caskets are actually just laid out on biers, so they're not in the ground like the Trumans, or not in sarcophagi like the Adamses or the Washingtons. If you just flipped those open, what remains of them would be there, which is totally bonkers to me. And what was great about this too is that area where the Garfields are kept is usually off limits. You can look through the bars, but usually people don't get in there. In fact, now we just returned on this 4,000-mile trip that my father and I are on, and the folks who are in control of the tomb there, they don't even have the keys anymore to get in there. They're up at the front office. So it's even rarer to get in. When we went back in June 2005, I was 10 years old there, wearing my Red Sox World Series champion shirt. The caretaker, he said that other than C-SPAN, nobody had asked to go in there in 50 years, 50. Maybe he meant to say 15, 15. But my father and I both swear that he said 50. So regardless, it's a rarity that people get that close. But I always wanted to get closer to the grave for better documentation. You can see the inscription better. So there are a few instances where we had to go an extra step to get the best photos of these places. So on the top right there, Anna Harrison and William Henry Harrison in North Bend, Ohio, near Cincinnati. The inner tomb there is usually locked. My father contacted the caretaker, Bev Myers, who 20 years later is still the caretaker. And she let us in, get closer. Melinda Gilpin, who was in charge of the Harding tomb, also in Ohio. My father got in touch with her, and we were able to get that unlocked. And then the bottom right there, that's Grant's tomb in New York City. And at the time we went, in August 2004, photography was banned in Grant's tomb. And also you were prohibited from going down into the lower level. This was because ostensibly of the September 11th terrorist attacks. Now, who 3 years later even was planning on, causing such a horrific incident at Grant's tomb, at the sarcophagi of Ulysses and Julia Grant? I don't know, but so we happened to eventually luck onto a more understanding park ranger who led us down there, and you'll read about it in Presidential Grave Hunter, but that was a saga just to get that photo, again, because of the 9/11 attacks. Some people, one of their favorite chapters in the book comes early on. It was a formative moment in my presidential history journey when I went to go see Ronald Reagan lie in state, again, 20 years ago. 2004, a lot of things happened for me in my presidential journey. Well, my parents, Paul and Lynn, asked me when Reagan died, do you want to go down see him lie in state in Washington, D.C.? We lived in Rhode Island, 400 miles north. And I said, sure, I was 9 years old. And then the very next day, my father broke his arm. We weren't going to be flying, and it was either he was going to drive me or it wasn't going to happen. And it went back and forth so much, and you can see that his arm, the cast went up past his elbow. So how was he going to drive 400 miles like that? Well, he did eventually, and it was a little nerve-wracking for his high-strung 9-year-old a little bit, but eventually we did go, and this is a photo of us together. It's a little bit blurry, but it's the only one we have together from that trip at the Washington National Cathedral. Actually, the very day after Reagan's funeral had been there, And this is a scan of the commemorative card that we got at the Capitol after we saw him lie in state in the rotunda. This photo appeared briefly in the book trailer. Now, my father is described on the back of my book as my zany boundary-pushing father. He's also now my pro bono agent. So sometimes I'm way more reserved and buy the book, and he's like, we got to get the mission done. So in this instance, this was April 2010, and on my mission to get all the vice president graves now. Vice President Garrett Hobart is buried in Paterson, New Jersey. The cemetery where he's buried, Cedar Lawn, they were closing up for the evening. And I'm thinking, well, New Jersey's only about 200 miles from home, maybe we can come back another time. He's like, no, we're here now. So he got us locked in the cemetery on purpose. So again, I gotta leave some details for the book, but he did not consult me at all. He was just like, talking to the employee, all right, lock us in there. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? And you can see that. Now, this did not go all the way around, but there was a 7-foot tall wall with barbed wire at spots. The barbed wire did go all the way around the cemetery. So as you can see, we did get out eventually, but that was one adventure that my father got us into that I was not expecting. So there's another one. So what sets me apart from most of the other grave hunters who are interested in this is Vice President Nelson Rockefeller is buried on private family property in the Hudson Valley area in New York. And even one of the people who inspired me to visit all the presidents and vice presidents, C-SPAN founder Brian Lamb, who you also saw later interviewing me on C-SPAN, which was a great full circle moment, he couldn't get access to the grave. In fact, when we sat down in his office, the day I first met him, within 2 minutes, he said, how did you do it? How did I get in there? And you could see there was a tree crushed to the fence. And so, or as my father would call it, an act of God, but that was another very, precarious event, and I was having a lot of cognitive dissonance, but my father also, he skipped going to a different vice president. Somebody had to take my photo, but he skipped out on Vice President Henry Wilson in Natick so that if I happened to be the only person to go to all the vice presidents, or therefore all the presidents and vice presidents combined, that I would have the title to myself. So he did also visit, actually he went twice because he had done recon and then brought me back the next week. But that's quite an interesting tale in the book, and really had Brian Lamb's attention, and once he heard it, he decided to put me on C-SPAN. Now, James Lavelle, you saw the photo, the Pulitzer Prize winning photograph by Robert Jackson, the moment that Lee Harvey Oswald was shot, November 24th, 1963 in Dallas. Mr. Lavelle, the homicide detective in the resistol hat and light-colored suit, he was also at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. So that was really remarkable. When I learned that he was still alive, this was back when I was a senior in high school in 2012, I said, I gotta interview this guy for my website. And I sent him a snail mail letter, and 3 days later, 91-year-old Mr. Lavelle emails me. He was like, sounds great, Kurt, here's my cell phone number. And we arranged that. We spent 3 hours with him at his home in Garland, Texas in April 2012. Now, because things are never simple with my father, we co-created a television concept that we actually ended up having in the works for several years with Vin DeBona, the creator of America's Funniest Home Videos. It's called Scofflaws, America's Least Wanted, where we took crazy, silly, asinine rules, laws, and policies, and we would try to satirize them in the most over-the-top, inane ways possible. And so as I had this set, serious interview set up with Mr. Lavelle, my father learns about super soakers being banned at the Republican National Convention in Tampa that year, 2012. And my father goes, wouldn't it be great if for a promo shot for our TV concept, we were able to get Mr. Lavelle to reenact the Pulitzer Prize winning photograph with a super soaker? I'm like, are you absolutely insane? This is my serious interview with a guy about the Oswald shooting, the Kennedy shooting, Pearl Harbor, and he was the adult though, so it happened, and so he made the pitch to Mr. Lavelle, and there's a lot of nuances in the book about how that got crazy, but Mr. Lavelle was very sharp, and he was actually a proponent he didn't believe in gun control at all, and he was on board with this because he knew that it wasn't making fun of the Oswald shooting or the Kennedy shooting, but it was trying to tackle this Tampa situation. And so I'm dressed up as Oswald there. My dad's wearing the same hat style Ruby wore, just his head is bigger. And Mr. Lavelle, we have the handcuffs. He went in and he got a good-looking hat, and we recreated this shot. And I guarantee you that this is a one-of-a-kind photo. That's for sure. If you want to go on my website, it'll link to the YouTube video where I have the 55-minute serious interview with Mr. Lavelle. And not like this wasn't serious in a way, but is satire. Now, another living person, because again, the book isn't entirely about just meeting the dead presidents and first ladies, some living ones in there too. So back in June 2013, I had just finished my freshman year of college. I'm 18 there with Jimmy and Rosalind Carter. And yes, that's how you pronounce it. It's Rosalind, we were told. I get very emphatically down there. Anytime you hear somebody saying Rosalind, they are very wrong. Jimmy Carter, at the time, was 88 years old there. And he used to teach Sunday school at Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains. So we went down to Georgia. We're not the devil. We went down to Georgia and attended his Sunday school service. Then you had to sit through the pastor's actual, full service, and then the Carters would take a photograph with you. So that's what we got here. My dad is wearing a Scofflaws custom necktie that he got. So you can be sure that when we were in the church and signing the guest book and everything, the Secret Service was really eyeing what my dad's tie said. So, this was a very quick interaction, but we got to hear President Carter lecture for about 40-45 minutes. So that was a great experience. And then they also used to record all it, and you could buy a DVD copy of the Sunday school lesson. So we have that. So that's a great thing to look back on. And then Bill Clinton, another president I met him at the Brown Bookstore in Providence, Rhode Island. So Brown Bookstore is the bookstore of Brown University, the Ivy League school. And I was 10 years old. I was a 5th grader at Orchard Farms Elementary School, Cranston, Rhode Island. And photography was banned at this event. It's not like now where we all have the smartphones with the cameras built into them. So they were able to do that, and we were thinking, how do we commemorate this moment with a photo? We tried a bunch of different ways, and we came up with, I had to sneak a camera past the Secret Service, and I would get in less trouble for it if caught because I was 10. So we ended up with 2 photos, and one of them is here. And then a full circle moment happened last June, 2023. This was my first book signing that I ever attended, and again, bent the rules a little bit. And June 2023, my first book signing and book talk for Presidential Grave Hunter occurred at the Brown Bookstore. So I love the full circle moments. So that was very touching. Now I'm going to get into some of the Truman stuff, because a lot of you are local and might have an interest in Harry Truman. And this is not a paid advertisement or anything, but I really love this app, Roadside President. So I am friends with the people who put it together. So they have thousands of presidential sites across the country. that you can find on this app with pinpoint accuracy. They take a little, offbeat, off-kilter view of these places, but again, some of them are the major ones. Like, for example, the Truman Library is on there, the Kennedy gravesite's on there, the Washington Monument's on there. But then they also have, like, here's the statue in Doylestown, Pennsylvania of Ronald Reagan holding up a potato pancake, except it's an invisible potato pancake because the sculptor was worried that from certain angles it would block people's view of Reagan's face, so instead it looks like he's being stereotypically Italian or something, like this. Or another Reagan one is he ate at a McDonald's in Alabama, and that McDonald's now has a bust of Ronald Reagan in there. Or my dad's favorite, one that I actually damaged my phone photographing, is the parking space memorial where Abraham Lincoln's father married for the second time. It's in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, if you're ever really bored. But so here's a list of some of the Truman sites that they have on the Roadside Presidents app. They currently have 36 total. You see on the top right there, and then they have it broken down by state. And because so many of them are in either Kentucky because of Alvin Barkley or Missouri because obvious reasons with Truman, it doesn't look like there's that many pins, but if you zoomed in real close, you see that there's 36 Truman-related sites that they have around the country, you can see. So on top of that, so some of these are on the app, some are just other Truman-related places that I've tracked down. One that's actually just a couple streets over from where I live now in Washington, D.C., is the Truman apartment at 4701 Connecticut Avenue Northwest. And the Trumans, for 4 years, lived in apartment 209, which I assume is on the second floor. It had 5 rooms. I don't know if the configuration's the same because I couldn't get past the vestibule. But I thought I was going to be able to get in. There was somebody, actually this gentleman here, and he went into the vestibule, and then I was going to try to follow him in, and then he couldn't get in because his daughter lives there, but he didn't know the code. I was like, ah, man, because I've heard that there's a plaque outside the apartment itself that says that the Trumans lived there. So he was there during his time as a senator, the entirety of his time as vice president, and then that's where he was living when Truman ascended to the presidency with the death of Franklin Roosevelt in April 1945. Then, of course, they moved into the White House. Now, this was a very cool one, and you can see I'm wearing this shirt, and I promise you, I have more than one shirt. So I was like, oh, do I wear a different Presidential Brave Hunter bowling shirt? I said, no, I should wear the same one that I wore in January when I bowled at the Harry S. Truman bowling alley at the White House complex. So in April of 1947, Harry H. Vaughn, Major General and military aide to Harry Truman, as an early birthday gift, birthday's in May, for his 63rd birthday, he gifted President Truman bowling lanes. And they used to be located in the West Wing basement where the Situation Room actually is now. Truman used them a few times, not too much, but when he left the White House in 1953, I guess he decided that he wasn't going to take the lanes back here to Independence with him. That's a little hard to ship. So he gifted them to the White House staff. Then a few years later, I believe it was 1955, the lanes were moved into the basement of the executive office building. So where most of the White House staff's offices are, the vice president's office is in there. So just west of the White House. And I'm a member of the White House Historical Association Next Gen Leaders. There's about 115 of us across the country. There were between ages 25 and 35, viewed as kind of like up-and-coming leaders in areas of civic engagement, education, and history who advocate for the association. And we do some events sometimes, and one of our members actually works in the administration, and he was able to get about 20 of us into the bowling alley. So they sent out an email and said, you need to respond right away if you want to get, a chance to fill one of the 19 slots that we have. And I was on that thing in 3 minutes. And so I got to bowl where Harry Truman bowled and where other vice presidents, first ladies. You can see there, so the picture on the right, you can see behind me are pictures of Truman bowling, Nixon bowling, and then we have Pat Nixon there, and there's also photos of Lady Bird Johnson bowling there, and Obama, and it was really cool. So it's the White House bowling alley. It's technically under the neighboring building within the White House complex now. And it says that I don't have permission to play the file of me bowling. Okay. Let's see. Nope. All right, imagine that I bowl and knock over 8 pins here. So I bowled 100. So not the best, but this was also only the second time that I had bowled since the pandemic. So I was happy with it, and I got a strike in the 5th frame. So I was able to say that I got a strike on Harry Truman's bowling lane. So I was happy. Another cool thing, Truman related. So I mentioned that I used to intern at the Church of the Presidents in Quincy, Mass, where the Adamses are entombed. And during President Truman's campaign sweep in October 1948, he spoke at the church. They brought out this podium and he spoke on the front steps. Now, I wanted to show the side-by-side of me talking at the same podium for John Quincy Adams' birthday celebration 2019, but the photo had, in the Truman Library Archives, had copyright over it a bunch of different times. It said that I would have to contact the person who took the photo, who I think is dead, and I didn't have time to go through all those hoops. So if you go look up on the Truman Library website, President Harry S. Truman in Quincy, Massachusetts by Howard B. Allison, and that's the Ascension number, you can see that it's very clearly the same distinct podium that I spoke at as part of the birthday celebration for John Quincy Adams in 2019. Now, we all know the Dewey defeats Truman newspaper moment when Harry Truman held up the incorrect Chicago Tribune paper. Now, where was he when that happened? He was actually in St. Louis, so other side of the state of Missouri, but he was specifically standing aboard the Ferdinand Magellan. The presidential rail car had been first used presidentially by Franklin D. Roosevelt. Truman used it a bit. Eisenhower, not so much. And then it came out of retirement for one day in 1984 when Reagan was on the campaign trail. He used it in Ohio. But so Harry Truman had been standing there holding up the newspaper, and we know that photo so well. When it was decommissioned for presidential usage, it was offered up to the Smithsonian Institution, and they actually passed on it. And instead, the Gold Coast Railroad Museum in Miami, Florida, was the place that took it. In fact, I think Miami was the very first location that Franklin Roosevelt took the Ferdinand Magellan to. So a little bit of irony there. But there I am, and I was very strategically wearing my shirt that I had gotten, 4 years earlier here at the Truman Library that says I'd vote for Truman. So I like to plan those little things. And when my father and I were in the gift shop earlier, we could see that same shirt style is still for sale here. So that was nice to see. But so if you want to go stand where Truman was, go to Miami.
Could you go in the car as well?
Yes, you could go in the car, and they still had they had a wheelchair of FDR's in there because he would need an even narrower one to go through those narrow train hallways. So yes, you could go in there, and it was a very fun experience. Something not so fun though, you may know about the assassination attempt that happened on Harry Truman's life in November of 1950. Some Puerto Rican independence movement nationalists traveled to DC. They had become aware that the Trumans were not living in the White House at that moment because of renovations. Basically, the White House was gutted at that time. And they knew that he was staying across the way, Pennsylvania Avenue, at the Blair House. And so these men, they went up and they tried to assassinate President Truman, who was at the time napping on the second floor there. The one member of the president's security or Secret Service who was given their life in the line of duty was Leslie Coffelt, who was killed that day protecting President Truman. He was a White House policeman, was his title. He's buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Yes, I've been to his grave too to pay my respects. But my understanding is that President Truman, so he was awoken from all the chaos that was going on outside, and he actually looked out the window, the second floor window of the room that he had been napping in. So had the assailants looked up right when he was looking out, that could have been a much different story for the course of history there, the remaining years of the Truman presidency, would it have happened. I mentioned earlier that I've now been to 212 presidential cabinet member graves. So how did this really start and get to that extreme? Well, I'm from Rhode Island, and a member of President Biden's cabinet is Gina Raimondo, and I wanted to do an Instagram post talking about the past Rhode Island born or native or lived cabinet members. And I said, I think there's only two in the history, the entire history of this, this country, with presidential administrations going back to 1789, Rhode Island being one of the original 13 colonies and 13 states. How do we have only two cabinet members out of how many? Is that right? So I added them all up, which took a while. And I came out to that we had, with the Biden administration, I believe, surpassed 600 cabinet members. And now about 480 of them are dead. Only 3 now are from Rhode Island. Gina Raimondo, G. William Miller, who was in Carter's administration, was not a native Rhode Islander, but he lived there a bit and kind of consider him one. But the very first president to put a Rhode Islander in his cabinet was Harry Truman. And he had Attorney General J. Howard McGrath, who's shown here, buried at St. Francis Cemetery in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. He had also been a governor, senator, and he's one of 15 Truman cabinet members whose graves I've been to. So, but I had to give a special shout out to the Rhode Islander here in Truman's cabinet, because that's the one that really got me to go down the insane path of visiting all the cabinet member graves. So, only 250 to go. There's a book that's for sale here in the shop too, which you should get sometime after you've gotten Presidential Grave Hunter, not before. Is Matthew Algio's Harry Truman's Excellent Adventure. And I saw there's even magnets for it here, which was really cool. I can't wait for the Presidential Grave Hunter magnet. But so Harry Truman, just after he left Washington, he and Bess went on a road trip in the summer of 1953 to go back to Washington for a speech. And along the way, they passed through different towns, visiting friends, stopping at restaurants, and one restaurant that's still there and was close enough for me to track down one of my off days from work recently was the Princess Restaurant in Frostburg, Maryland, where there's also a Baseball Hall of Famer buried, so I was able to tie that in. So this is not the exact booth that the Trumans sat at. That had to be replaced. But this is the spot, and there's a framed photo of them there with the proprietor, man of Greek ancestry. There's a letter that's also there, and there's a little tiny plaque that says, Harry and Bess here. So Matthew Algio's a great book. I recommend it. And also shout out to him he actually is the person who got me in contact with Azalea here to even have this event. So highly recommend Matt Algio's book. on the Truman's road trip. But so he went and he got the exact meal that they did. I did not. I just went for a lemonade and a cherry pie. But I brought his book there to sit. And I was waiting for a while because right when I got in, there was a family and they had sat in the Truman's booth. So I just had to wait there forever. And they're like, can we get you anything else? I'm like, nah, I'm just waiting for the Truman booth to open up and everything. And you can see my receipt there. So that was just like August 3rd or something. Yeah, August 3rd, 3:06 p.m. assorted fruit pies and lemonade. Now, I was going to play a little clip but we had some technological issues. We had to switch rooms from where this originally was. And it says I don't have access to play this clip right now, but it was a flashback to 15 years ago this month when my father and I were here at the Truman Library, walking up to the original entrance, which you don't use anymore since of the renovations here, and going over to the statue of Truman that is now in the lobby used to be out looking out a big window next to the freedom flame toward the gravesite, and I was 14 and I was taking pictures of the statue, and I just look at him and he's recording me. I'm like, why are you recording me taking a picture? So he said, because I can't videotape myself. It's our vacation. And then I went over to the Truman grave and showed it at night, and I was kind of bossing him around a little bit. I was like, all right, can you go there and go in the corner, don't say anything. So I was just trying to, because then I was just recording the cicadas and the silence and everything. So that would have been cool, but technology got in the way today. And also remember, I ruled a 100 in that other video that you didn't see. So, well, there's a still frame of it, and they have the Harry Truman 125 banners up, and this year was Truman 140. Well, you can contact me if you want to see those videos, or I'll have the entire raw footage up on my YouTube channel. But yeah, I just want to thank the Truman Library and Azalea and Ben at the gift shop here, and everybody who helped make this technologically possible after our difficulties earlier. This has been a dream come true, and I'd like to answer any questions that you have, like am I seeing a therapist? Yeah, all those things. Anybody? No.
When did you get this passion? I mean, at what age?
So it came in a few stages. So I first really got interested in the presidents and the first ladies when I was 7 years old. My mother, Lynn, bought me a book called So You Want to Be President. It's authored by Judith St. George and illustrated by David Small. And had really funny illustrations. And what's great is, so Judith St. George has passed away, but David Small is still alive, and I was able to converse with him a bit in the last year, and even sent me a free doodle of Abraham Lincoln. They share a birthday, and he really was touched by what I had to say about my inspiration that I got from his book, and changing my whole, life path, really, going into history, history major, master's, and working in Washington, D.C., and everything. So that was really cool. So that was at age 7. Then at age 8, I first went to those Adam sites that I mentioned. And then 9 was when my dad saw the C-SPAN program, a re-airing of the book talk on Who's Buried in Grant's Tomb, the C-SPAN book. That really inspired me, because he told me about the book talk. I hadn't watched it. And I asked him, can we do that? Visit all the presidential grave sites? And that's how we ended up spending years and money on that. So it was in a few different stages. And then I started out just, okay, the presidents and the first ladies, and then also the vice presidents, and also, the Supreme Court justice is also here. And Taft was also a Supreme Court justice, so I already have that. And then that's when you end up like, I didn't know that I already had 4 out of the however many Andrew Johnson impeachment managers, and I already have 4 out of the 12 angry men. mean, that's just how it happens, in stages.
I mean, it was just innate, nobody pushed you towards this.
Well, my mother had bought me the So You Want to Be President's book, so in a way but everything else is like, once that happened, it was just all me. A lot of people ask like, oh, was it my father dragging me around or something? No, I had very supportive parents and a sister who I dragged around.
Sounds like you dragged them around.
Yeah, well, only my sister felt like she was being dragged. So again, my parents have been very supportive.
I have kids about your age, and I drug them all over town looking at historical sites and taking their photos. And I had to drag them. They had almost no interest in.
Are they seeing therapists?
Yeah. And even now they don't have any interest in it.
Well, I mean, and what's good though is that you were able to pursue it for yourself, even if they didn't, pass it on.
That's no excuse for not bringing him tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to instill this in him, and it just didn't take.
Well, I know, hopefully that you have something else that you can bond and share with them though. But yeah, it's not for everybody. But I like to think that cemetery interests could be kind of like a big tent interest. Like I'm not necessarily all about the macabreness or anything. Some people are more about like, oh, the grave robbing or something, or some people are more interested in spiritualism or the ghosts. Look at you, Dave.
Yeah, right.
But and some folks just like to go for certain architectural styles, and some people like to go for more the historical figures who's actually buried there. Some people might go for genealogy reasons, and I'm a little bit of most of those things. But yeah, it's a big tent interest, I think.
At this point, what is your kind of like unicorn in the wild? What is the one place you would really love to go and visit, currently dead or alive, I suppose?
So there's one now. A few people have subsequently said that, like this one person book said that they also got Rockefeller, but there's no photo, and so maybe some other people got him, but still, for most people, their unicorn or white whale is Nelson Rockefeller. Obviously, I have done that now, but somebody that I don't know anybody who has gotten to is the last surviving signer of the Declaration of Independence, Charles Carroll of Carrollton, is buried in Ellicott City, Maryland. He is interred in a chapel that is built into the Carroll family home, DeRegan Manor, and there's a saying I've read there was a saying that land has been owned by God, Indians, and Carrolls, is the saying. And they're not, we'll say they're not open to people, so then I've heard that they've even turned away historical societies that wanted to help with the preservation of the mansion there. So I've got 15 declaration signers remaining. Some I can still get, some I can't, because there's one who's lost, there's one who was really lost at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean when his ship sank, and then there's Charles Carroll. So he's up there for sure. Yes.
Did you plan to write another book since your first book is finished? If yes, what kind of subject you're going to write?
So I have a few ideas in mind. One that I've technically already started, but I wouldn't be able to finish for a number of years, would be the Supreme Court justices. So I already have a title, and I wrote the intro and half of the first chapter for a draft. So, because some of those stories would also go back to these earlier days, and then some of them would be like, nah, I've gotten 3 already on this trip. Again, including 2 this morning, Supreme Court justices. And there's some wild tales there, like being yelled at Arlington National Cemetery for just walking up to a grave. So that was very unpleasant. Climbing a wall, it was the very next day, and I had to, this was in Baltimore, I was 17, and I had to go down, first I had to drive off of the sidewalk from where my father had parked the car. And then I had to go the wrong way down a one-way street, then do a 3-point turn, and then parallel park for the very first time in my life in a physicians-only parking spot so that we could then go in and get a Supreme Court justice. So I feel like that's something that would be of interest in a future book. So I also am potentially going to be working with a co-author on a book about where I currently work, a historic congressional cemetery in DC. So these are all ifs, of course, but I'm planning on working on them, and some work has already been done. But a few years down the road, I mean, I still have over 30 Supreme Court Justice graves still left to get, so there's still wacky stories to get. But now with the 70, that I've already gotten, that's more than all the presidents and the vice presidents combined. So, I mean, it certainly can be its own, book as it is, but I've got 30 more. Any last questions? Anybody want to help me dig up Martin Van Buren? Okay, no, I said no. We said no to that. That's right. Okay. All right. Well, I guess with that, again, thank you everybody for attending, and thank you again so much to Azalea and everybody at the Harry S. Truman Library here in Missouri. It's been 15 years, and next time I'm going to come back with more time to go through the exhibits, because I said this is my favorite presidential library. No disrespect to the others, but this really stuck with me when I was a 14-year-old kid. And I have a brick out front now, and this has been great, and I'll always remember this, so thank you.